One of the things that really stuck with me, and it's just understanding that how much is the value of $100 in 30 years' time, and how you broke that down. So I just wanted to start with that preface.
Well, that's actually an interesting one because, I put up that slide that basically, the way I started the day for everyone watching is I said, all of us in this room are in the fight of our lives and you don't realize it. And the fight is that we have a thing called inflation and nobody pays really attention to it. We all go, the Reserve Bank of Australia says, our target is 2 to 3% per year. So what I did was I went back in time and went back to 1990 and I said, all right, how much is a can of Coke in 1990 and how much is it today? And the answer was $2.80 today and 80 cents then. And then I went through fresh food and I went through, actual things Australian buy. So an apple, a Coke, a litre of fuel, and excluding real estate, which I'll talk about briefly, the actual compound annual growth rate of costs through inflation is 4.3%, I think it was. Was it 4.3? Yeah, 4.5. Yeah. 4.5%. And so that's what it actually is. And property is 7.3 and rents is 5.5. So if you exclude real estate, because nobody needs a house, right? But if you just look at all the other stuff that we consume, you need to be compounding your income at 4.5% per year just to stay stationary. And I said another way to think about it is rather than the cost of things going up, another way of saying it, the government doesn't want you to say it like this because it would get them voted out, is that your dollar is becoming worth less and less and less. And I showed a map of what $100 today will be worth in 30 years if things are going up by 4.5%. And the answer is $26.70 is what it's worth. So you lose 75% of the value of the Australian dollar over 30 years, and over 100 years, it reduces down to $1.18. So
you could basically call it zero.
You could basically call it zero. This is not the Argentine peso we're talking about. This is the Australian dollar over one lifetime. So when people saying, you hear Bitcoin, people saying fiat currencies all go to zero, they're not being a conspiracy theorist. That's what 4.5% inflation actually does to the value of a dollar. And that was eye-opening. And that's why we said to people, so that to counter the deflating value of your money, you have to inflate the value of your money through investing. And 4.5% is actually not the number because the government's taking a third of your money. You actually need 6.5 or 7% by the time you pay tax to have after-tax dollars equal to 4.5% of growth.
You know what's funny is all these deposit holders that have their money in the bank, right, in these accounts. I think over the last year or so, they were getting half decent returns, right, in the fours, which means it's still not even covering the lot, keeping up. Like if you're getting 4% and that's 4.5%, it's still losing 0.5%.
Pay the tax on that. It's actually 3%.
But people don't understand it.
You're losing 1.5% by being a conscientious saver. If you invest in that best performing, which is real estate, unleveraged, of course, if it's 7.5%, by the time you pay the tax, it's a problem. So this is why I say to people, you're in a fight of your life. And if you are not compounding your money proactively well beyond 6%, you're actually going nowhere. And what's happening is people are going, I'm not seeing it, and they're feeling it by starting to work 2 jobs, living in smaller homes, eating lower quality food. Their life is a result of shrinkflation. Their life is shrinkflation. They're going on less holidays, eating worse quality food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By the time we go to retirement, they're going to be living in caravans, and that's going to be a fancy holiday. So it's interesting.
I think what resonated a lot with the people in the audience as well, it's like, I think you coined it as like, all the seminars you've ever been to, it'd be nice if someone actually just lifted up the kimono and showed them exactly what you're doing. Yeah. And that's what you did, exactly inside your financial balance sheet, if you will, in your portfolio. And I think people got a lot of value out of that. Whoever's in the room, at whatever stage of their wealth journey, they all seem to resonate really well with that transparency.
Yeah, I did. I showed why I did. I put my entire superannuation into one stock, which was eye-opening to people, to be honest. My superannuation's not a relatively small portion of my overall net worth. But I basically said to people, the idea is to make sure that your money is growing at a CAGR, compound annual growth rate, well beyond the government-issued deflation of your money. Yeah, go ahead.
Just explain what CAGR is for anyone who
compound annual growth rate. So it's a compound annual deflation rate of 4.5% that your money's getting worth less every year.
Yeah.
So you've got to be growing it and CAGR compound. So I said, this company called MicroStrategy, it's an interesting short story, but they're a publicly traded company. They're in business intelligence software in the US, and they've been trading sideways for years. And they had $500 million worth of cash in 2020. And the chairman, Michael Saylor, said, this money is becoming less and less valuable as time goes by. Every year it's dropping by 4.5%. Now, 4.5% on $500 million is a lot, right? It's $45 million or whatever, on a billion, whatever it is. It's a lot.
Hey guys, we recently ran a property day where we took people on the road in 2 buses and showed them 12 real estate deals. 4 of them were commercial and the rest were land subdivision deals around the Gold Coast and southern Brisbane. And this is the workbook. It's a 43-page workbook where we actually show you each and every deal, how much was paid for it, how the development was done, how much money was made, and so much more. And we've decided to give this away to anybody who's interested in this kind of thing. All you need to do is go to unemployable.com.au/2024, 2024. It'll give you an insight into what our coaching clients get when they join us in the program. It'll show you how millions of dollars were created through real estate deals right here in Australia just in the last few years, and you can get it for absolutely free. Go to unemployable.com.au/2024.
And so they looked around the world and they said, what we're going to do is we're going to buy Bitcoin, because since Bitcoin started in 2008 to 2020, it's the best performing asset class in the world every year, except for 3 years, on a compound annual growth rate basis. And it was 170% per year compounding over its entire life. And over the last 5, it's been 55%. So they converted their $500 million in cash, starting in October of 2020. And then they went to the markets and borrowed money at 65 basis points, or 0.65%. By the end of that first year, in the first 3 or 4 months, they'd acquired $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. And by then accessing capital at, let's say, 1% interest rates and investing in an asset growing at 55%, it's just a simple arbitrage between one asset, which you can get for 1%, which is cash, which is getting worth less and less, and then investing in an asset that's growing. That could be property, it could be Bitcoin, it could be any asset that's growing, and they chose Bitcoin. And since 2020, they started doing that, they became the best performing stock in the world on the S&P, outstripping NVIDIA. Their returns were 1,350% in the last 4 years. NVIDIA is 900%. So when I heard about this trade, being a Bitcoiner, I went, I'm not going to leave my superannuation in cash or stocks that are growing at 6 or 7%. I'm going to have some fun with this. I just put my entire super into MicroStrategy, and I 7x'd it. I didn't catch the ride at the start of the trade. I was about a year late, but I improved my superannuation by 700%. But all that it was an understanding of what's really happening to my money and the urgency to get it out of assets that are performing at less than that.
But again, it's educating yourself. You took the time to research the company, research the CEO, what he's doing. It's basically arbitrage is what he's doing, right? Mm. And meanwhile, the rest of society is there flicking through Facebook and Instagram and watching Netflix, and then whinging about why they can't go on a trip, or why they can't, don't have enough money for dinner and whatnot. And I think this is the other thing is so important. Yes, joining a coaching program, get in a room, but at the same time, everything's available on YouTube, right? The amount I've learned in the last 9 months, just being surrounded by guys like Adam and yourselves that are a lot more savvy than me in certain areas. I've educated myself heavily. I didn't know who Michael Saylor was 18 months ago. And now I do some research on him. I've got Bitcoin as well. And again, it's just a store of value that's hedging against inflation in my eyes. I don't trade it. I just buy it and keep it. And it's just hedging.
Yeah, it's as you said as well, it's you've got Bitcoin is continuously getting hot, right? So there is only X amount of it in the world at any one time. Whereas, what happened during COVID? They basically inflated the price of money continuously, and it put us in a position where we all felt we were uncomfortable. And then now it's starting to bite people back in the arse now. And it's just interesting to think, because I'd always kind of avoided Bitcoin. I'd always thought about yesterday. I have got some in there, but after what you said, I've been really kind of reconsidering where I've got my assets.
None of this, guys, should be financial advice.
No,
I'm very clear about this. Yeah. Like I'm a high school graduate. I've just self-taught. None of us are qualified to give you advice. Talk to whoever you want. Don't listen to us. But I think the wrong number with Bitcoin is 0%. And whether, like, even if you just buy a little bit to spice up your portfolio, I think that's smart. And I think the world's starting to understand, and they don't really appreciate it till it hits home and they start to feel it. And right now, a lot of Australians are feeling it. And if you're feeling that pinch, I think if you're a family leader, it's behoven on you to actually go and research. Go to hope.com, which is Michael Saylor's website, who's the chairman of MicroStrategy, and they own $16 billion worth of Bitcoin today, right? Go and start your learning journey there and do at least 100 hours of study if you want to become a beginner and 1,000 hours if you want to become an expert. And as Michael said, I've never met anybody who, after doing that 1,000 hours, hasn't bought Bitcoin. And we're talking about Mark Cuban. We're talking about really heavy-hitting people that are now Elon, all these people lining up behind. And I think it's just, worth noting, just having a little maybe. The other thing that people came up to me afterwards, I said, look, as you guys know, I sold a couple of properties a couple of years ago, and I did 2 sales, $8.5 million, which I just invested, and I put it into fixed income. And that fixed income is a diversified product. It's totally managed, and it's paying 9.8%, and I get paid monthly. And so that's been a really interesting transition, which I don't have time to talk about that full reason why I did that. But I'll talk about another day. But what got people really interested, because my private banker was actually there on Saturday, as you guys know, and he got up on stage and spoke about a little bit about what private banking is and our relationship and how we work together, and all that was quite eye-opening for people. And I said, I'm selling 2 more properties, and my bank manager loves my home, and he always says to me, never sell your home, never sell it. And then I explain, I'm sorry, but I'm selling. and I'm going to sell these 2 more properties in the next few months, and I'm going to invest it in that, and I'm just going to let it compound and not touch it. And I said, look, the properties will bring in about $13 million, no debt on them, sell them. And I said, how much do you think $13 million gets to after 10 years? Because we're going to be overseas for the next little while if we just don't touch it. And people are like, I don't know. I pulled out the compound interest calculator. The number is $30,700,000 if I just don't do anything and just let it compound. Now, part of it, I'm moving to a place that's tax-friendly so that my tax is very modest while I'm away. And then I said to people, now, if I, at that point, decide that I wanted to start living off that, right? If I've got 30 million at 9%, how long do you think it would last if I took out 50 grand a week? When would I run out of money? And people are like, oh, I don't know. Let's think about it. And the answer is never. Over 30 years, I would never run out of money, and it would actually grow to $55 million if I took out 50 grand a week basically for the rest of my life. And the reason I tell this story is not to brag. This is just 2 properties right behind that. It's 2 properties that I bought cheaper. They had a property cycle. I then sold those properties and so on. The point of it is to start using a compound interest calculator in your life instead of sitting there wondering. People just suck at thinking forward. And so many people don't actually sit down and go, if I can get X amount of real estate, let it go through a cycle, sell it, invest it like this, go and enjoy my life and have a little side hustle going so that can just compound, right, while I'm having a break from it all. When you do the math, you start to go, holy shit, I'm a lot closer to my goals than I thought I was. But people aren't taught how to use a compound interest calculator app.
And I think a lot of them are scared, to be honest, right? Like, ignorance is bliss. That's why, like, when I was speaking, I was like, when was the last time you actually calculated how much it costs you to live rather than just looking at a bank account balance? And majority of people have no idea what it would cost them to live. And we had I did a coaching call on it, and I had a few students, clients that were at the event, and they came up to me afterwards and said, actually, you know what, I've done that, right? And I'm actually spending 30 to 40% more than what I actually thought. And now they have automatic debits coming out of certain accounts for different things that they want to invest in and stuff like that. But the reality is, once you actually work out it's scary, because once you actually work out the number, you then have to make a choice, right? And not knowing that choice sometimes is easier, like that ignorance is bliss comment, because you now have to make a choice going, all right, I'm still going to continue doing the same thing, or I'm going to make myself accountable, and I'm going to have difficult conversations with family members, with husbands, with wives, to sit down and go, actually, you know what? We're spending too much here and we're spending too much there. And that's uncomfortable, right? But what are you willing to go without in a short period of time to then in future have an easier life, right? And make those harder decisions up front.
And it's an emergency, Eric.
It is.
Like, people don't realize they are actually in a swimming pool with piranhas that are just eating away at their future. Every time the government prints an extra dollar without producing anything, you're storing your time and energy that you go to work for in a dollar. Now, I know people in our coaching group that have got millions of dollars sitting in bank, and they worked for. And every time the government prints a dollar that is not worked for, they are fucking you.
Yeah.
And this is this is what people don't realize until I put that chart up and said, this is your dollars that you are. It's the worst store of energy in the world. It is like a leak. It is worse than an iPhone when they've got an update coming out.
Yeah.
Like, it's that bad.
Basically, with those calculations, right? If you have $1 million sitting in a bank account and just sitting there,
You're losing $45,000 a year.
Yeah,
of post-tax money.
But the issue with that is you're losing $45,000 a year, but as that year passes, prices are going up again. So you actually, when you see the compounding, you're actually losing more because you're doubling it up.
Compounds, yeah. I looked at the compounding like when we went to those 6, 7, 8% in Australia. People go, it's back to 4% on 4, 5, 6, 8 compounding.
Yeah, right.
It's 4% on top of that.
Yeah.
It's actually like 25% or something up.
Like, if you look at the last 4 years, and if you could snapshot 2019 prices of multiple things to what it is today, that compounding would be astronomical.
This is why I'm so furious that there was so little accountability to the government for these enormous costs and debt that they put this nation into. And it's just like, we're not going to look into that too much. What they've done to the average punter in this country through these ridiculous lockdowns that they put us into and closing businesses, that was not free. That was the future effort of our children that was taken from this nation. And there's absolutely nothing other than, here's your payout, you're gone, the new policy's in place. And it just
moved the money from the government to the wealthy people. Like Jerry Harvey benefited probably more than anyone.
They handed out he's one beneficiary because people got their money and went and bought a big screen TV.
Yeah. But not everybody. That you got a couple students that were on stage that said he actually took it out to fund their lifestyle, to fund the business. That's not $1 million a month.
We had two young guys. Yeah, with 2 young guys who got up and never told their story before students of ours. Amazing. And they said, we took our money out of COVID and backed ourselves into the business. They're doing $1 million a month now out of Burley Heads selling one product.
I asked them the question. I said, how did you fund this thing, right? And one of them said, that $10,000 you could take out of your superannuation, you could do it twice, one on June 30th and one on July 1st. That's what I took out. But instead of buying TVs and fancy things and, NutriBullets and all the bullshit that people bought, he actually funded himself for food, rent, and the rest of it, because he actually moved in with his business partner. So they can then go and work their 18-hour days growing this thing, which is now doing over $1 million a month. Within how many years? 3.
So exciting.
That's almost.
Let's just give them a shout out. It's Nature Pharmacy, right?
Yeah, Nature's Pharmacy. If you want to see an amazing product and 2 genuinely incredible guys, Nature's Pharmacy, they sell sea moss gel, best supplier in the world of it, and they're from Burley Heads, and it's a phenomenal product. I use it every day, twice a day. This is not a paid promo. This is just, if you want to see a masterclass in creating a beautiful product and amazing culture.
Yeah, Adam just came up to us when we were at the other office, and he was like, mate, he just pulled out this random blue thing. He said, pull that spoon, go, eat. Yeah. I was like, you sure? No, eat it. I was like, and then tried it. Amazing. Like, there's no sugar in it, but it tastes so sweet. And the amount of benefits in moss, is it moss or sea moss? Sea moss is incredible. They've got, I believe they said it's over 100 different minerals, and they've only tested it for 76 minerals. And you're like, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah,
incredible.
You should get the distribution rights for South Korea, mate.
You never know.
30,000. They're doing 30,000 units a month.
It's crazy.
And they've just taken. They're my new tenant. So the church is moving out of the building that we looked at on the weekend, and they're moving in. And I went around to their current space, and they got 45 people in this tiny little factory, and the culture is incredible. and they're moving into the new space, putting $4.5 million worth of equipment. And they said on the day that they're going to be able to do what used to take them 8 hours in an hour and a half with the investment that they're putting into this new space. But go check them out.